Heat lifts from the concrete at Falcon Ridge Army Airfield as Captain Riley Hart stands on the ramp. Visor down. Jaw set. 20 yards away, another pilot climbs into the front cockpit of her AH-64E Apache Guardian. Call sign Viper 61. Hands moving carefully along familiar switches. Crew carts hum. Rotor tie-downs lie coiled. And the desert air smells like hydraulic fluid and dust. Riley does not move. Because in this world, bearing is the only shield she owns. Rumors skate along the flight line. Psych evil. Someone says under a breath. Insubordination. Another shrugs while watching ground crew chalk wheels and check panels. Beyond the fence. NATO observers step into shaded seating and Department of Defense visitors lift cameras. Because Exercise Sentinel Forge is about to play out in full view. A live demonstration that can shape careers and budgets across Allied formations worldwide for years to come. If you are here for quiet courage, tell me which city you are watching from in the comments. And consider subscribing so you do not miss the next story. I will take you inside the cockpit without breaking what must stay protected. Stay with me as the clock slides toward step time and the airfield holds its breath. 5 words from a 4-star general are about to change everything. The roster room hums with low voices and the scratch of dry erase markers when Major Brian Talmage taps Riley Hart on the sleeve and steers her into the hallway. He delivers the decision in a flat staff tone that leaves no room for debate. Scratched from the sortie by order of Colonel Brett Kellerman, Riley keeps her eyes level on the cinder block wall, nods once, and answers in a measured voice that carries only to him. Understood, sir. The hallway smells like coffee and dust, and she holds to bearing because that is what rank and duty demand. 7 months stack themselves in her head in the space of a breath. Long simulator blocks until muscle memory replace thought. Live fire on the range with the M230 thumping steady, and Hellfire runs clean. Weeks of rehearsals with JTACs until the 9-line felt like a second language. All built around the airframe she knows best. AA-64E Apache Guardian. Call sign VIPR 61, where she holds the most hours on the line. Talmage adds the replacement like a footnote. Lieutenant Sable Oaks will take Viper 61. Good pilot. Fewer hours. Not yet tested on a live demonstration with NATO eyes on the glass. Riley acknowledges without comment. Because commentary is not her job. And because the operation staff makes assignments while ATC manages airspace and clearances. 2 different lanes that never mix. She walks back into the room. Quiet steps on waxed tile. And takes the ground observation seat near the back. The air shifts by degrees as pilots register the change. Conversations clipping short. Glances sliding off her shoulder like rain off a flight suit. She opens her notebook. Writes the range control frequency and the timeline, and prepares to watch instead of fly. Bearing stays locked. Even as the Sting lands and sits heavy behind the ribs, Colonel Brett Kellerman stands at the front of the briefing room and runs a clean mission brief that sounds like a metronome. Weather, flight paths, range safety, and ROE flow in a steady cadence while a slide lists NATO observers seated on the far side of the glass. He posts the final roster that moves Viper 61 to Lieutenant Sable Oaks and assigns Captain Riley Hart to ground observation. A decision that lands without open challenge. Pens scratch. Chairs settle. And the room keeps its military tempo. At the back row, a murmur gathers like static. Lieutenant Mark Garrett leans toward Lieutenant Anna Ennis and trades a quiet theory about a psych evaluation and an incident in Qatar. The words shape to die before they reach the front. Lieutenant Colonel Lauren Ferris stays locked on procedure and timelines, checking radios, step intervals, and range control contacts with the same calm she brings to every brief. Major Quinn Dotto watches the roster board with the wary patience of a former Apache pilot who knows what competence looks like and what it costs. Riley closes her notebook and stands when the brief ends. Shoulders level and eyes forward. She walks out with perfect bearing. No complaint. No wasted motion. just the steady pace of an officer staying inside the lines. The whispers follow into the hallway like a draft under a door. Cool and persistent, she keeps moving toward the observation post, carrying both the standard of discipline and the quiet sting of being sidelined. Captain Riley Hart steps onto the observation deck and sets her hands on the rail as glass flashes heat back into her face. Below, Lieutenant Sable Oaks moves along the AH-64E Apache Guardian with call sign Viper 61, checking blades, gear, and pylons, while Master Sergeant Roy Decker tracks each step on a clipboard. The walk-around looks methodical. Nothing rushed. Nothing skipped. The range bleeds light across the ramp as crews finish last checks. Oaks calls the tower for engine start, and ATC clears the request in a clipped cadence that carries through the glass. Seconds later, the cockpit shows util-wide PSI twitching inside limits, a number that rises and dips when it should stay steady. Lieutenant Colonel Lauren Ferris orders a hold on the operations net and directs maintenance to the aircraft. Keeping the flying side quiet and the radios clean, the rotors stay tied. The checklist pauses, and the crew chief is already climbing the ladder. Decker and the maintainers pull panels, service the system with MIL, PRF 83282, and verify the nitrogen precharge on the accumulator with calm routine. They run an ops check, log the work, and confirm hydraulic cautions out before stepping off the ladder and clearing the area. From the deck, Riley reads the whole scene like a map and files the likely precharge issue in her head without laying a finger on the helicopter. The mission clock keeps sliding toward step time. VIP seating fills with observers and cameras, and the line steadies into normal rhythm as procedure does exactly what it is built to do, while rumor looks for air and finds none. A black SUV rolls through the gate at Falcon Ridge Army Airfield. General Cole Renford steps out in service uniform, the exercise director with JTF authority under the published OPORD and FRAGORD. He crosses the ramp and meets Colonel Brett Kellerman near the VIP line. Listening as the colonel offers a quick summary, Renford shows nothing on his face, nods once, and turns toward stairs to the observation deck. Inside the glass room, he pauses beside Captain Riley Hart and asks if she was given a reason for her removal. She answers with a simple "no, sir," and keeps her eyes on the airfield. The mission clock keeps sliding forward, while NATO observers settle into seats and cameras track the ramp. Renford studies the board, the ops log, and the crew notes, then makes his decision with the same quiet certainty he brought onto the ramp. He switches to the operations net and announces that he is assuming operational control of Exercise Sentinel Forge, effective immediately under the exercise order. He directs Colonel Brett Kellerman, Major Brian Talmadge, and Lieutenant Colonel Lauren Ferris to report to the tower at once. Air traffic control retains all clearances while Renford's orders apply to operations, tasking, and command relationships. A line that stays bright and respected. Relief mixes with a hard edge of tension across the deck as a real decision-maker takes the helm and sets the stage for correction without theater. General Cole Renford keys the operations net across Falcon Ridge Army Airfield and directs Colonel Brett Kellerman, Major Brian Talmadge, and Lieutenant Colonel Lauren Ferris to present documented grounds for removing Captain Riley Hart within 60 seconds while the mission clock keeps moving. The deck holds its breath as staff pages flip and screens stay blank. No packet arrives. Renford waits the full count, then confirms on the net that no documentation has been provided and that the exercise will proceed under his authority. He announces a lawful limited disclosure guided by the original classification authority to correct the record and protect essential details. Then he speaks 5 words that tilt the base on its axis. She flew the classified run. The room absorbs the phrase like a sudden pressure change as radios hiss and crews pause mid-step without breaking procedure or safety. Only the minimum facts follow. 14 weeks earlier, Riley Hart flew an interdiction mission in the Qatar Basin under radio silence and without aerial support. In an AH-64E Apache Guardian, she suppressed multiple firing points and held a corridor while a UH-60M Black Hawk executed the extraction of a pinned reconnaissance team. She returned to base with low fuel and controllable battle damage. And the Apache did not carry passengers at any time. Air traffic control continues to own clearances on tower and ground, while Renford operates on the operations net that governs tasking and command relationships. That line stays bright and respected. The ripple moves outward across pilots, crew chiefs, and NATO observers as rumor yields to respect. Cameras lower, notebooks open, and the flight line settles into a steadier rhythm as vindication lands without theatrics and the work of the day resumes. Captain Riley Hart crosses the hot ramp toward AH-64E Apache Guardian Viper 61, while the base settles into a quiet that feels like focus. The limited disclosure has drained the noise from the edges, leaving checklists and breath. On the operations net, General Cole Renford authorizes mission profile unchanged and execution at pilot discretion. Master Sergeant Roy Decker confirms maintenance completed servicing and an ops check with hydraulic cautions out, then clears the area with a nod. Riley climbs the ladder and slides into the rear seat. Harness snug, helmet seated, cords routed clean. APU start comes first. Gauges steady. Electrical online. Engine 1 to idle. Then engine 2. Temperatures and pressures in the green. She moves through MFD setup, checks FCR and TADS pages, verifies weapons page safe, and confirms radios and range control presets. She runs the flight controls check with a deliberate hand. Cyclic, collective, pedals. Each response crisp without lag. Performance numbers are reviewed against weight, density, altitude, and expected winds. No surprises hiding in the math. On the ramp, a line of pilots and NATO guests watch in silence as cockpit discipline replaces rumor with routine. Tower owns the next moments and keeps the cadence tight. Viper 61 is cleared for engine start, then cleared for departure when the rotor system reaches full RPM and systems stay clean. Riley eases into a hover pause, holds it steady, and checks power margin and instruments one last time. She taxis to the line, turns into the wind, and lifts smoothly. A clean climb that says competence restored and a unit returning to standard under proper authority and procedure. Viper 61 checks in on the range net over the desert and receives clearance from the controller, while ATC manages traffic on separate frequencies. Riley levels at a safe altitude, confirms hard deck and lateral limits, and builds her workflow. The aircraft systems show green across engines, hydraulics, and electrical. She slides behind a ridge to set up Pass 1. Pass 1 is a SEAD run against SHORAD mock sites that are arrayed along the valley floor. Using terrain masking, she pops up long enough to let FCR build a target list, then refines with TADS to confirm aim points and priorities. AGM 114R Hellfire launches in sequence on the highest threats, staggered for battle damage assessment and sensor reacquisition. Controlled M230 30mm bursts suppress remaining emitters, while she respects trunnion limits, hard deck, and lateral boundaries. Pass 2 turns into CAS for friendlies simulated on the western berm. Riley receives a clean JTAC 9 line, reads back the key data, and confirms Type 2 control, with the controller tracking the talk onto aligned sensors. Cleared hot follows, and she drives the sight picture through the designated mark, delivering a Hellfire on the first target group and short, accurate 30mm strings on the second while maintaining deconfliction, friendlies, safe distances, and timing that keeps the lane open. Pass 3 is a demonstration gun run. She sets in with smooth pedal work and a stable TADS image, then uses short, precise bursts that land inside the target box while watching airspeed, torque, and rate of descent. The brake turn is disciplined and held within G limits, with altitude never dipping below the hard deck. She calls inbound to the pattern, lands to the line, and performs a by-the-book shutdown while NATO and DoD observers watch a day's work close the loop on professionalism through accuracy, safety, and calm. Captain Riley Hart completes the shutdown on Viper 61 and kills the switches in sequence, then pulls the canopy and steps off the skid into the dry heat. The ramp goes still, in that way flight lines do when work gives way to respect. She tucks her gloves into her helmet and clips it to the bag. Breathing evens as the rotors bleed off and the desert quiet settles. Pilots and crew ease into a line along the taxi stripe without a word. Lieutenant Sable Oaks moves first. Chin up, hands open. The small posture that says she understands the weight of the earlier assignment. Riley answers with a steady nod that puts mission above ego and turns heat into calm. The moment lands clean, and the line seems to exhale. Master Sergeant Roy Decker meets them at the nose and taps the logbook with 2 fingers before handing it to maintenance. He studies the bird and then Riley. The look that says, real skill, shows in how a pilot treats the machine and the people who keep it flying. Tow bars click. Chocks slide. And panels open for post-flight checks as the sun drops over the range. Rumor finally loses its grip and trust takes its place on the ramp. The officers' club hums with low music and the clink of glassware after sunset, as about 40 pilots and a handful of crew fill the room. Conversations taper when Captain Riley Hart steps through the door, and people rise without a word. A quiet gesture that needs no ceremony. She gives a small nod and moves toward an open space by the windows where the airfield lights glow. The mood feels steady and expectant rather than tense. Lieutenant Mark Garrett and Lieutenant Anna Ennis step forward first and own the rumors they passed along earlier in the day. Riley accepts the apology and reframes the lesson with simple language that everyone can carry back to work. Silence can be classification, not guilt. Especially when missions intersect with authorities above the unit. Heads dip in understanding, and the room takes a breath. Riley shares only what belongs in open air. 14 weeks earlier, she held a corridor with an AH-64E Apache Guardian, while a UH-60M Black Hawk executed the extraction for a pinned reconnaissance team. Decisions were made under pressure using training, checklists, and disciplined crew coordination. And the aircraft returned with low fuel and controllable damage. No sensitive details. Only the parts that teach. Major Quinn Dotto speaks next and admits he should have pushed back on the grounding decision. He frames it as an officer's duty to raise a hand when process and reality start to drift. The point lands because it is professional and humble at once. Riley thanks him with a look that says the room matters more than the moment. Conversations break into small groups around high tables and over coffee. Pilots compare notes on decision-making under stress. The clarity of a clean JTAC-9 line, and how to repair trust inside a formation, one honest action at a time. The last light fades over the airfield, while laughter returns in short, easy bursts. By the time chairs scrape and people head for early showtimes, rumor has given way to cohesion, and the squadron feels whole again. The inquiry convenes in the base conference room at 8:00 a.m. Colonel Paula Hendricks from JAG presides at the head of the table, with General Cole Renford seated nearby and Marcus Webb from the Office of the Secretary of Defense observing. Captain Riley Hart sits with a binder of flight logs, orders, and maintenance records arranged in clean tabs. The room feels like a courtroom without spectators. The panel begins with an orderly review of the classification chain and the guidance from the original classification authority. They walk through the legal basis for the limited disclosure used to correct the record while protecting sensitive details. The distinction between Air Traffic Control Authority and the operations net is recorded for clarity. Each jurisdiction stays in its lane by intent and by practice. Question rounds move in measured cycles rather than showy bursts. Timelines are tested against logs and radio recordings. Radio procedures and handoffs are read against checklist items and unit standards. Maintenance sign-offs are confirmed by name, hour, and entry, including the servicing and ops check that cleared hydraulic cautions on the morning of the event. Findings are read without spin. There is no misconduct by Captain Riley Hart. Her flight status is unrestricted, effective immediately. And a classified commendation is added to her official record. Higher headquarters opens a review of the decision path that led to her removal from the roster. A process that will run outside this room. The hallway is quiet when the door closes. Hart signs her copy and tucks it into the binder. Renford and Hendricks exchange brief nods that look like work completed rather than victory claimed. Accountability arrived through procedure, not a public performance. And that is exactly how it should be. Days after the inquiry, Captain Riley Hart stands on the ramp at Falcon Ridge Army Airfield with a circle of new AH-64E Apache pilots. She runs advanced drills that favor preparation over bravado. Chair-flying checklists until responses are automatic. Mistakes are treated as data to improve the next rep, not as shame. The lesson is simple. Discipline first, then speed. Inside operations, the assignment board is fresh, with updates that speak without fanfare. Hart appears as flight lead for the next event, as training officer for the new class, and as mission coordinator for the upcoming range period. The additions read like trust restored and responsibility accepted. A sergeant pins the sheet and the room gets on with work. At her desk, she finds an unmarked patch in a small envelope. No note. Just a quiet reminder that the mission happened and mattered. She sets it in a drawer and heads for pre-flight. The patrol is routine on purpose. A clean launch, a wide loop over the desert, and a standard recovery to the same parking spot as always. When she steps off the skid, the greetings sound the same, yet carry a new respect that does not need to be named. If you have been here for this kind of quiet courage, drop your city in the comments and subscribe to follow the next story. We will keep it accurate, human, and grounded in the work. The horizon is still out there, and tomorrow the checklist begins again.